Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most incredible, dramatic, and frankly, heartbreaking chapters of modern history. The story of exactly how India and Pakistan were formed. We are going to unpack the massive, untold story of the 1947 partition of the Indian subcontinent, and we'll do it entirely by analyzing the hard historical facts. Let's get right into it.
So how did a single political decision force millions of people to leave their homes overnight? Think about that for a second. In 1947, a literal line drawn on a map caused millions of Sikh, Hindu, and Muslim families to abandon everything they knew, turning them into refugees in the blink of an eye. The sheer scale of this tragedy is almost impossible to comprehend. But to truly understand this dramatic climax, we can't start in 1947. We actually have to jump back over 300 years to the arrival of a seemingly small, harmless group of traders from across the sea.
Okay, here's our roadmap. We're going to break down 300 years of complex history into 5 quick steps. Traders to rulers, the Great Rebellion, divide and rule, the freedom struggle, and finally, the final partition. Step 1. Traders to rulers.
To really grasp this, we got to rewind to the early 1600s and look at the stark contrast between these two eras. Before colonial rule, the Mughal Empire was at its absolute peak. Cities like Delhi were these massive magnets for global merchants, and the subcontinent was world-renowned for its immense wealth, stuff like silk, spices, and cotton. But fast forward a bit, and we see farmers completely impoverished. They're suffering from famine and total economic devastation, as staggering amounts of wealth were drained right out of the subcontinent to fuel Britain's very own industrial revolution. So how did such a drastic reversal even happen?
Well, in 1600, Queen Elizabeth I granted a charter to a trading entity called the East India Company. By 1608, their representatives arrived in India to set up trading posts. But their ambitions quickly expanded way beyond just commerce. Fast forward to 1757, the Battle of Plassey. Now, the absolutely crucial point here is that this wasn't won purely by military might. It was won through conspiracy. A company officer named Robert Clive literally conspired with insiders to betray the Nawab of Bengal, Siraj-ud-Dowlah. That single betrayal handed the company the keys to Bengal's vast treasury. By the time we hit the Battle of Buxar in 1764, the East India Company had decisively defeated an alliance of Indian rulers. Almost overnight, they transformed from a simple trading company into a massive political and military juggernaut.
Which brings us to step 2, the Great Rebellion.
You know, all this aggressive British expansion didn't just fly under the radar. Almost a century of simmering resentment finally exploded into open resistance in 1857. You often hear about the spark, right? The introduction of new Enfield rifle cartridges rumored to be greased with cow and pig fat, which obviously deeply offended both Hindu and Muslim soldiers. But the actual, deep-rooted causes were heavy taxation, widespread loss of land among local elites, and severe discrimination against native soldiers. And what's truly remarkable here is the unprecedented Hindu-Muslim unity that emerged. Soldiers and civilians alike rallied behind the aging Mughal emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar, making him the symbolic leader of a unified resistance. Local leaders like Rani Lakshmibai and Tatya Tope stepped up to lead fierce battles across northern India. Honestly, for a few months there, it genuinely looked like British rule might completely collapse. But using superior resources and modern weaponry, the British ruthlessly shut the rebellion down. Thousands were killed, and Bahadur Shah Zafar was exiled to Rangoon, spending his final days as a prisoner. The immediate result in 1858 was the total abolition of the East India Company. The British Crown stepped in and took direct control of India. The rebellion had failed, sure, but it perfectly set the stage for a totally new kind of political struggle.
Step 3, divide and rule.
Now, let's take an analytical look at how the British actually secured their power after taking direct control. They were deeply, deeply terrified by the Hindu-Muslim unity they witnessed in 1857. So to ensure it never happened again, they implemented a very specific strategy: divide and rule. Yes, they brought railways, the telegraph, and modern educational institutions to India. That's true. But the underlying political strategy was to fracture the society. They actively pitted communities against each other to easily maintain their colonial control.
So how did the locals respond to this new reality? Well, education and modern political thought really started to wake up. In 1875, noticing that Muslims were falling behind socially and economically post-1857, Sir Syed Ahmed Khan founded what would eventually become Aligarh Muslim University to encourage modern education.
In 1885, the Indian National Congress was formed, initially just asking for more representation. But then we hit 1905. Lord Curzon partitions the province of Bengal. While they claimed it was just for administrative ease, it violently exacerbated religious divides and sparked massive Hindu-Muslim riots. Literally the very next year, in 1906, the All India Muslim League was founded in Dhaka with the specific goal of protecting Muslim rights. And this is where we see a fascinating ideological split emerge. The Indian National Congress claimed to represent all Indians and pushed for broad democratic rights. On the flip side, the fundamental anxiety of the All India Muslim League was that in a majority-rule democracy, the Muslim minority would be permanently marginalized. It's really crucial to look at this neutrally. Differing anxieties about the future of a free India were beginning to pull the entire subcontinent into two very distinct, very separate political camps.
Moving into step 4, the freedom struggle.
Hitting the 20th century, the demand for independence becomes an unstoppable wave. Just look at the rapid escalation of these events. In 1919, you have the horrific Jallianwala Bagh massacre, where General Dyer fired on thousands of unarmed civilians. That event completely shattered any remaining trust in British justice. Through the 1920s, figures like Mahatma Gandhi transformed the freedom struggle into a true mass movement through civil disobedience and nonviolence. Meanwhile, political thought was also evolving rapidly. In 1930, Allama Iqbal first proposed the idea of a separate political system for Muslim-majority areas. By 1940, the Muslim League under Muhammad Ali Jinnah passed the Lahore Resolution, officially demanding autonomous states. And then, in 1942, the Congress launched the massive Quit India movement, basically telling the British that their time was definitively up. The election results from 1945 and 1946 tell a crystal-clear story of absolute political polarization. The Muslim League just overwhelmingly swept the Muslim seats, cementing Jinnah as the undisputed leader of the Muslim masses. Conversely, the Congress utterly dominated the non-Muslim constituencies. So by this point, the subcontinent was functionally divided into two massive opposing political blocs.
And finally, step 5, the final partition. As we approach these final events, the tone really shifts to a tragic climax. The British, who were totally economically exhausted after World War II, realized they just couldn't hold on anymore, especially after the Royal Indian Navy mutinied in February 1946. Negotiations to keep a united India, like the Cabinet Mission, totally collapsed. On August 16 in 1946, Direct Action Day triggered horrific violence in Calcutta, with thousands killed in mere days. And that violence spread like wildfire to Punjab and Bihar. The trust was entirely gone. In a desperate, frantic hurry, the last viceroy, Lord Mountbatten, announced the plan for partition on June 3, 1947. Just 2 short months later, on August 14th and 15th, Pakistan and India became independent nations.
The ripple effects of this rushed decision were immediate, and they were devastating. Get this, a British lawyer named Cyril Radcliffe, a man who barely even knew India, was given just a few weeks to draw the new international borders based on outdated maps and statistics. The result was absolute chaos. He drew a line straight through communities, farms, and homes. It resulted in unprecedented communal violence, as law and order completely collapsed. Families, homes, and generations of memories were simply divided overnight. Let's just pause on this staggering number for a second. 10 million. Over 1 crore people. Hindus and Sikhs fleeing to India, Muslims fleeing to Pakistan. It literally became the largest human migration in recorded history. People traveled on foot, on overflowing trains, carrying whatever they could strap to their backs. And tragically, countless people never even made it to their destination, lost to terrible massacres on both sides of the brand new border. Now, despite all the bloodshed happening on the ground, the political leaders were still holding on to a vision of tolerance. Just 3 days before independence, Muhammad Ali Jinnah delivered a famous speech to the new assembly, stating, "You are free. You are free to go to your temples, you are free to go to your mosques, or to any other place of worship in the state of Pakistan." It was a beautiful vision for a free and equal society, but it sharply, painfully contrasted with the unimaginable violence civilians were experiencing as they physically crossed those newly drawn lines. As we wrap up this explainer, we really have to look at the enduring scars of 1947, because this partition didn't just divide a piece of land. It left deep, deep emotional trauma that generations still carry today. Nearly 80 years later, the geopolitical realities of South Asia are still defined by this single event. Both nations spend massive portions of their wealth on defense and border disputes, rather than purely on development, and it's all fueled by the lingering political tensions born in 1947.
I want to leave you with this provocative thought. We can't rewrite the past. But if we actually learn from the scars of 1947, if we truly understand the history we've unpacked today, can the coming generations finally build a peaceful subcontinent? We study history not just to memorize dates, but to understand our present and, hopefully, shape a much better future. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope this deep dive helped clarify a highly complex chapter of our world's history, and I definitely encourage you to keep learning and reflecting on these events.